So you might ask, this sounds great, and I can see on your website at www.swirl today how to get to the GitHub site, and from there you can, in 2 lines with Docker, get Swirl running in 5 minutes. But you might wonder, how do I integrate this with Microsoft 365, and is that a good idea? So what I would like to do is I'd like to invite my colleague Jason to join me now. So I'm just going to rotate my screen a little bit here. So here's the 2 of us. All right. I guess I'm going to be a little, yeah, I'll try to, there we go. I think that's better. Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Jason.
Absolutely.
So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can hook Swirl to M365. And the first thing I want to mention is, in order to do this, you have to be a Azure administrator.
That's correct.
That's right.
That's correct.
So if you want something like this and want to deploy this, it's actually not that hard to do. Getting the software is easy. If you have a large Microsoft, if you're a large Microsoft account, you already have multiple admins who will know exactly how to do this. And the key thing is, it's actually under your control. It is not a Swirl control thing. You are granting permission to Swirl's, your installation of Swirl, I should say, to talk to your M365 tenant, right? That's really what we're going to look at.
That's absolutely right. So the experience is the global admin at the tenant, at the customer site, will register an app in their Azure AD. And in doing so, it's just a few pieces of information. It's the app ID, our app, the Swirl app that we're hosting, or that you could be hosting. Be the tenant ID, and it would
shared
be
secret.
A shared secret
That's
between
right.
the 2 of them. And so at the end of the day, the global admin has the ability to grant access to his entire tenant space, a subset like a group or maybe a region, or to no one. If for whatever reason they need to shut off Swirl, they can just literally 1 click and the app is cut off.
Right on.
Yep.
Right on. So let's take a quick look. I think you can see right here. So I am the one of the M365 admins for Swirl. Obviously, we're not a big company. Jason's the other. So we got both here. The big thing to start with, if you're doing it yourself, is you go to Azure App registrations. This is one of the most interesting features of Azure. It literally lets you connect to the new worlds, like Swirl. When you first set up your M365 tenant, it's critical to select the right tenant model, and we recommend using just the Azure AD multi-tenant, but not allowing personal Microsoft accounts. You don't want some random account trying to auth with your backend. So we recommend staying to this particular setting. Now, you'll also set up a bunch of other things like a redirect URI, literally the URL that we're going to be used for the callback. You might need to modify that. But this ultimately, through the app registration process, you're really creating what Jason just mentioned, right? These are the app ID, the object ID, and then I'm not going to show an example, but under these links, we would do things like create redirect URLs, the application URL, and then here's where we would create that shared secret.
That's correct.
It's all pretty much point and click Azure, right?
That's right.
For example, when I add the URI, I don't have to edit a file or anything like that.
Yeah, what we're doing is we're enabling two paths here. So there's the single sign-on event into the Swirl app. So that's one leg of the authorization and authentication. And then once in there, we then speak to the Microsoft Graph API. And that allows us to do the much richer, deeper searching into OneDrive, into SharePoint, into your Outlook. And
without extracting everything.
Without extracting
That's
everything.
right.
Exactly.
So actually here on the screen now, it's another part of the app registration, is that as the admin, you have to grant the Swirl installation permission to the different Graph APIs. So it starts with a very simple interface where you pick the graph, you pick the individual APIs. Ultimately, these are the APIs that you can authorize Swirl to access. You can also grant permission for across the organization if you're the admin. You can also leave it so that each individual user will have to consent. Literally, at the moment that they log into Swirl, as you saw, there's a little profile button, and I can click the Microsoft button to authenticate. If you choose, you can have each user approve this access to their calendar and their mail. So that's a choice that you make organizationally each time you deploy it. And finally, once you have all that stuff set up, you're going to take these, a number of codes. This is one example. You'll take this application ID, and you're going to have to put this into the environment where you're running the search. So here you can see that client ID is plugged in. After you've installed Swirl, you're going to go into the search provider endpoint, which is where you actually configure each search provider, and you're going to activate it. right? So here at the bottom of that screen, all I have to do is go in and change active to true, hit put, and it should just start working.
That's correct.
Now tell me again, I just want to make sure I don't miss it. When this is set up, the access to the M365 tenant, that's totally under the tenant's control, right? It's not the Swirl installation is pulling the
That's
data,
correct.
and it's not making a copy. It's only using the graph APIs
That's correct.
to query what's there.
And it's whether or not the customer is hosting Swirl themselves and permissioning it themselves, or whether they're using the Swirl Cloud, which we host also in Azure, of course, to provide to our customers. Either model, it's the global admin who can turn it on, turn it off, adjust the granularity of how to select the permissioning model.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think this is really the key. You know, access to M365 is possibly one of the most important repositories between the email and the OneDrive. It has incredibly valuable, crown jewel type of data. And so we take that very seriously. And the goal of Swirl is always to be enterprise grade, and the control, the access is 100% under the deployer's control. So that's why we did this, and we just wanted to cover that. Thank you very much, Jason. That was excellent. Very well. All of that, after you've done the login, then you'll have that power to search across all those repositories. You can add all of the open source, your internal applications, and over time, we're going to roll out many, many more repositories. It does not take long to do a search API level integration. We plan to release a variety of new services, from ServiceNow to GitHub to almost anything that's out there in the enterprise. We'd love to hear from you. Anything that you would particularly like to see us support, we'll put it on the list.